Hi, everyone. We hope you've been enjoying the orientation activities we've been offering to parents, families, and students. I'm excited today to be joined by Dr. Andy Farkey and Mr. Gabe Santos of the ALF Museum. We're going to have a little chat about what's so cool and neat about the ALF Museum Collections Room. And then we're going to get a little behind the scenes tours with our collections assistants about how the collections room looks like, and then some specimens that we have. Again, my name is Jennifer Liu. I graduated from Webb in 2005, and I work as the Director of Parent Relations and Special Events. And the ALF Museum is one of kind of my favorite parts of the Webb schools. I was definitely, quote unquote, a museum kid. It brought me a lot of kind of fun and joy and peace, and kind of oftentimes a hectic Webb schedule. I think during museum after school, I was able to kind of tune out, not really worry about study hours or homework assignments, and kind of really just focus on prepping my fossil or picking through the microfossils. So I'm excited to let our new Webb families learn a little bit more about the ALF Museum. So we're going to go ahead and do some introductions. So let's go ahead and have Dr. Andy Farkey tell us a little bit about what he does at ALF and the Webb schools.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Andy Farkey. I've been here at Webb and at the ALF Museum since 2008, and it's just such a great place to be. I get to do a little bit of everything on campus. So my primary duties, of course, are at the museum, where I am the Director of Research Collections, as well as the curator. So I do everything from making sure the field expeditions are moving along as they should be, to working with a great team to make sure that the collections are accessible to students and to researchers. In addition to my museum duties, though, I'm also a faculty member in the science department. I'm an advisor for VWS, and I am in the dorms.
All right, and now we have Mr. Gabe Santos, who's our collections manager and outreach coordinator.
Hi, everybody. Yep, my name's Gabriel Santos. My pronouns are he, him, his. And like Jen said, I am the collections manager and outreach coordinator here at the museum. I've been here since about 2015, I think. Time's a little weird for me right now. But yeah, as the collections manager and outreach coordinator, it's a wonderful experience to be able to work on these amazing fossils and also figure out ways to have our audiences, whether it's the Webb community or our overall community, interact and learn about their moment of time, as we like to say at the museum. I am a paleontologist as well. I studied marine mammal evolution, but now my focus is mostly in education work. Sometimes you might see me around campus wearing a costume or cosplay, because I find a way to use that for my education. And also, I just like to dress up as a Jedi when I can.
Great. I'm so happy to have you guys join me today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our first question. I think most families and students, when they come to Webb for their missions tour, kind of the first stop they get is the ALF Museum. So I think people are familiar with Gabe's Zoom background, so they've seen our wonderful displays. But I think most people don't know kind of what is the museum's collections room, Dr. Farkey, and why is it important?
Yeah, so the exhibits are the public-facing part of what we do, but I think really the heart of the museum, what really keeps the museum going forward, is our big collection of fossils. We have over 170,000 fossil specimens in the museum. Over 90% of those were collected by Webb students, by Webb faculty, and museum staff. So that is, in many ways, the most important part of the museum, because without those specimens, we don't have a museum. So the collections room is where everything that's not on exhibit is stored and available for use and for education. Few people realize that less than 1% of all of our fossils are on exhibit at any one time. And so all the rest of those have to be someplace. But just because they're on exhibit doesn't mean that they're not being used. They might be used by visiting researchers from around the world. They might be used in a class by Webb students. They might be used in research that's done by even some of the museum staff. Maybe some of them will end up on a television program or a website or something like that. So we have all different uses for these fossils. So really the collections room is just where they're stored, where they're cataloged, where they're digitized, to be made available for when someone's ready to use them.
Great. I like to think of the museum collections room kind of as our library of fossils. So it's there again for students and researchers to access. And it's, one of the neatest parts about, the Webb schools is that we actually have a museum on campus and that Webb students are engaged in kind of the study of paleontology through their 9th grade evolutionary biology course. And they have an interest in it. They continue in honors museum courses, and also they actually have the opportunity to work with Dr. Farkey and Dr. Lofgren, our museum director, to also study advanced studies in paleontology as an upperclassman if they choose to do so. Okay, Gabe, so as collections manager, can you give our audiences a little kind of brief description about how the museum's collections room is organized and what kind of day-to-day work is done in the museum collections room?
Yeah, well, like you said, it's pretty much like a library. All of our fossils are organized based on kind of like how old they are and where they come from. It's what we call chronostratigraphically in science terms. So the oldest fossils are kept in like one corner of the room, and as you go down, localities and the fossils get younger through time. So that's kind of how we organize them and like decide to put them away. We have a really great, magnificent collections room where we have all these wonderful cabinets that we can put them in. And then of course, to help organization, all of our specimens, like Dr. Farkey said, are databased. So every single specimen gets its own unique number, and that goes into our database so that we can keep all of the information that's relevant to it associated with that specimen. So it's just like a library, right? If you're looking for a certain book, you go to a computer, you type in like, I'm looking for Harry Potter books. You type it in, like, okay, cool, it's in this section. It's the same thing at our museum. You come over, you're like, I'm looking for every single Triceratops fossil I can find. You go to our computer, you type in Triceratops, and it gives us where they are in the collection and all the information associated with them. And I can go grab them, or me or one of the other collections assistants can go grab them and bring them to a student. And that's part of what we do at the museum is cataloging. It's a lot of cataloging. Most of our day-to-day involves us, taking the specimens that were moved from the field from either by students or, through mitigation work. And we give them that number and make sure all the information, where they're from, what kind of rocks it was in, how it was excavated, who excavated it. So if you're doing field excavations with the museum, your name's going to go in our database. And all of that gets entered into our really special database so that everything stays for future scientists.
Great. Thanks so much. I love that students are involved in field work at the ALF Museum, and one of kind of our things amongst the museum kids, and particularly those who go on the summer trips, is we always want to find an MQ, a museum quality fossil, and then you might actually have the chance of naming the locality after yourself. So I know that every time I'm down in the museum collections room, for whatever reason, I like to find my classmate Thea Hinkle's site. It's called Thea's Ledge, and it just makes me kind of happy. And I remember for our 15th year reunion, she brought her great aunt and we were able to show her that. And it was kind of really a neat, special moment. Great. So now let's talk about how can Webb students and researchers access the ALF Museum's collection.
Cool. So I would say, a lot of what I see is, using these in research projects with the students. So Webb has a curriculum that has opportunities for students to study paleontology from grade 9 all the way through grade 12. As our students are in the 9th grade evolutionary biology class, they might get a chance to go out to Barstow to collect fossils. Sometimes we bring them in for field trips so they can actually hold hands-on, some of the evidence for evolution from the fossil record, tying right in with what they're studying in the classroom. Other things that they do is they get a little further on in their education. For students that are interested and want to learn more about paleontology, there's a multi-year sequence of classes. So the students learn about everything that makes a museum tick, from what are the laws and the ethics around accepting specimens into our collection, and they look at actual examples from our collection. They learn how fossils are cataloged, and they might actually write some of those numbers on or do some of the identification that goes in there. And then later on, and this is really exciting for me, is some of the students do original publishable scientific research using fossils in our collection. Sometimes fossils that they themselves maybe found on a summer trip or on one of their 9th grade trips. So in this case, what they're doing is they're trying to figure out what don't we know about the science of paleontology. And by we, I don't mean just like at the high school level, but I mean any scientist anywhere. So they're creating new knowledge using the fossils in our collection. Maybe they're documenting them in the research lab, and then maybe presenting the results at a professional scientific conference or even in an international peer-reviewed publication.
Great, thanks, Dr. Farkey. Gabe, I wanted you to touch upon a little bit about kind of the, like you said, you talked about cosplay. So I know sometimes you go into the museums and you take out fossils and you kind of create a narrative and really kind of, showcase, Rayolph, who's the museum founder's kind of motto, which is our moment in time, and kind of craft these intersections between science, fossils, and pop culture. So can you, tell our Webb families a little bit about that? Because I know sometimes our Webb students get really excited about that. When we're able to do so, we hope to have them back on campus, take them off campus for some of our awesome and fun outreach events.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. Basically, what we do with Cosplay for Science, as we call it, is we connect science to pop culture stories, or we share the inspiration behind pop culture stories. Take, for example, Pokemon. Most of the Pokemon are inspired by real world animals, and there's even fossil Pokemon. And what we do at the museum is we take the fossils that are similar to the ones that inspired the fossil Pokemon, and we bring them out and create pop-up museums. It's basically a museum we can bring anywhere we want. And we also get to dress up as Pokemon trainers or Pokemon professors and help our audiences make the connections with something that they love to the science in their world. And that helps them to kind of think critically about the world around them. And hopefully that applies to everything. And they'll start to ask the right kind of questions, whether they're watching a movie, reading a book, watching TV, whatever. We can help them find the science in their everyday lives and interest. And what's cool is at the museum, we get to do all these pop-up museums at really cool places, sometimes even Comic-Cons, and students get the chance to participate in our pop-up museums. Last year, we had a really great success at our Pokemon Natural History Museum, where some of our students got to dress up as Pokemon and Pokemon trainers, and they did an excellent job in talking about the science behind Pokemon.
Great. I think that's kind of a wonderful thing that you've brought to the museum since you've begun your work here. So I think, thank you for all that you're doing to kind of spread the outreach and spread the science education and getting our students involved. All right, now to my last question. I think most people don't know, being a paleontologist, aside from working in the museum, doing research, a big part of it is actually going out into different sites and doing field work. And so can you guys both talk a little bit about, where being a paleontologist has taken you kind of to different parts of the world, different parts of the country, and if you have any favorite sites. So Dr. Farkey, let's start with you first.
Yeah, so I've been really fortunate to be able to travel all over the world as a paleontologist. Sort of my personal saying is, never pay for international travel. Always find a way to do it as part of your job. And so I've been able to do field work in places like Madagascar and China and Mongolia and throughout the United States. Been down to Argentina and elsewhere. Really, really just I enjoy every place that I go. I would say probably my favorite though is still the work that I do in the U.S. I've really enjoyed my times, for instance, out at Barstow with Webb students. There's amazing fossils out there still, even though paleontologists have been going there for over 100 years. And I think the thing that makes it fun for me, not just the fossils, but I think all the great memories of being with students and alumni and everyone else that I've been out to Barstow with over the years. And so, when we're able to do so, I think one of the first things I want to do is just take another, field trip out with students, to find some great fossils and just build some new memories.
All right, Gabe, I know your work has certainly taken you to many places internationally. So let's talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, I'm very, very lucky and fortunate to be able to go to these places that I otherwise might not have been able to go. I've been able to go to places like Peru and help to excavate ancient whales, which was awesome for me. And I've been even able to go to places not necessarily for field work, but for education. I've been able to go to Japan to help, take down an exhibit with our famous Dinosaur Joe. And I think my favorite place that I've been able to go to is Mongolia, specifically out in the Gobi Desert with the Institute for the Study of Mongolian Dinosaurs. There, we did get a chance to look for dinosaurs, which was super cool. But the whole point of that trip was to develop educational resources for remote towns in the Gobi where their nearest museum may be more than a day's drive just because they're so far removed from the main city in Mongolia. And so utilizing this really cool mobile museum and working with our partner, Dr. Belushasek Minjin at the Institute for the Study of Mongolian Dinosaurs, we've been able to use the immense privilege and resources we have here at our museum and share that with residents of the Gobi and teach them about their own heritage, their own dinosaurs that are found in their own backyard that have really changed the field of paleontology for us even, that they don't even realize. And so for me, that's been a really life-changing experience to be able to take what I've learned at the museum, what I've learned from Dr. Farkey and all the other amazing educators here, and be able to share that knowledge with people in Mongolia.
I mean, that's such a kind of a wonderful thing that you talk about, right? Kind of letting people know their own backyard and letting people know kind of their heritage and the science that's around. So again, Dr. Farkey and Mr. Santos, thanks for chatting with me today. As you know, I hope our Webb families will see, we call our museum kind of the little museum on the hill. It's small, but I think it's mighty. We have a wonderful collections room, and we always say that it's world class. So when we are able to be back on campus, if you haven't visited, I encourage you to come and visit because the museum is free to Webb families. So come for a visit, and if you have any questions, please let us know. And now I'm excited to let you guys see a little bit behind the scenes of the museum's collections room. So we'll have our museum collections assistants join us and show you kind of their favorite fossils and open up a storage cabinet so you guys can kind of see kind of what Dr. Farkey and Mr. Santos talked about when we kind of catalog our fossils that we find in the field and add them to our wonderful library of fossils. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bailey. I'm the collections assistant here at the museum, and I'm standing in the collections room. When you get here, you'll be working in here with me and Mr. Santos, and it's pretty much where we keep all of the fossils that are not on display in the museum. We keep them here in the collections room, and it's our job here in the collections room to take care of the fossils and to deal with them when they come from the prep lab and make sure they all have all the paperwork and things associated with them and that they're housed properly so that they'll survive forever. So where we keep all the specimens is in these moving cabinets. So I'll show you how it works. So the cabinets are all compacted together for maximum space, but they do spread apart so we can reach everything in there, and we do that like so. First, we have to check the aisle to make sure no one's in the aisle. Then they move open. Each of these cabinets is locked for safety, but we do have keys. And I put some of my favorite fossils in here to show you all today. So in each of these cabinets is where we store the fossils. They're all sorted chronologically or chronostratigraphically so that we have everything in order from the oldest fossils to the youngest. And in here I'll show you some cool ones. So this one here is a popular specimen. It's a bunch of megalodon teeth stuck in the rock. You can see the nice serrated edges on the edge. We also have some invertebrate loves. So these are insects trapped in amber style, which is pretty cool. Bunch of different sizes, including this one. You probably won't be able to see the insects on camera, but you'll see them soon enough. And another thing you're also going to be doing here in the collections room with me and Mr. Santos is creating cavity mounts. So some of our more fragile specimens need to have special houses made for them out of foam and paper and archival materials. This, for example, is a T-Rex tooth in a little foam bed. So you can kind of see it there. And it's again got those nice serrated edges. So I think the collections room is fun, and I think you'll like it too.